I thought I'd do just a little video on some quite difficult solo piano pieces by various composers. Some might be difficult for not just technical, maybe intellectual, or for some reason you might be surprised by some that I might pick, or then again you might not be so much. And you know, people find different pieces difficult for different reasons. If you're good at, say, thirds or tremolos, you could maybe find that easier than, say, another etude. But some people not so good at tremolos and good at chords or fast arpeggios, you know, might find it more difficult. But I'll start with this one, for example, Chopin Nocturne. I find this quite difficult because them chords, if you notice in the left hand after the octaves, it's quite a jump. To get them along with the flow and melody in the right hand can be a little bit awkward. It's not particularly fast. Again, it's not so much technical. You might find that as there. And also here again, getting the different parts, there's different sections, a little bit different tempos, trying to get them right, and them spread chords there, as you see in the left hand, getting all that to be balanced right can be difficult-ish. There's octave bits, I don't find them too bad, they're not exactly easy. In this bit here, again, it's another section, again, subsection sort of thing. We find that I find that quite difficult. You've got to make it balance and flow in the overall sound world with the parts before. It's just awkward. I find it quite difficult to get it to sound right. The overall sound world can be a bit of a difficult. So that's one. Another, they're not particularly in exact order, but I'll try and make the last five as probably the most difficult. But these for the moment are just various pieces that I find difficult. Of course, I haven't played all pieces by all these composers, so there's maybe some I haven't tried that are more difficult. I can't really comment too much on that. Now, another example is by Chopin again. This etude. So there, yeah, that's just very parts of it. Numbers 25, number 6 by Chopin. It's like thirds, augmented thirds or whatever, in the right hand. And to get them at speed Chopin puts on a decent tempo and be tricky with all the accidentals in it as well in parts. I find it difficult. Then you've got obviously the right hand part, the left hand part to play as well. So that's another. There's also other etudes. Etude opus 10, number 1, number 2, with the awkward right hand part, with chromatics, with little chords as well, with the first two fingers, with the thumb and first finger. And yeah, that's a bit difficult again to play at speed. A decent tempo, difficult. 10, number 1, you all probably know that arpeggios in 3 octaves, stretches and tenths. Not so easy. You don't have to do stretches as such because it's arpeggios, like spread chord, spread, but still difficult. Speed again, difficult. Number 4 is also difficult. Some parts are quite awkward. You do cymballing both hands in parts, fast and tempo, that's difficult. What else? Opus 25, number 5, with the middle sections like arpeggios, and you've got to make the different sound worlds between. It's like sort of written out in the middle part of the arpeggios. In the right hand, it's like, I think there's 3 notes to each note the first time, and then there's 4 notes to each note the second section of it. You've got to get that to somehow sound different and to sound well correctly. That can be difficult. And Opus 25, number 12 as well, C minor. I find difficult with that to playing the octave like notes, but like arpeggio type with both hands at the same time. I find that difficult. So also for difficult pieces, with Chopin's Piano Concerto number 1 in E minor, the first movement, it's just difficult. The slow parts aren't too bad, but again, to get the overall sound work correct with the rest of it, not so easy. But it's the faster parts, especially the middle section, at about 8 minutes, is it 9 minutes I think. Quite fast. It's difficult. It's hard to explain, it's just difficult. I find that the first movement of the first concerto is difficult as well. Also, I've got to try list now. There's obviously his paraphrases and Bellini and whoever has such transcriptions of them. Can be extreme difficulties. There's a few old masters play them, Hoffman, Sawyer and Bissoni, and they play them well. They play them at speed. Most of the time they play them well, but they are extreme difficulties, some of them. Also, of course, I find the etude, is it Sospiro, with the arpeggios and your crossover hands through little melody bits. Not so much that part at the start, so it's difficult, but later on there's sections of that that's difficult. And then the grand etude, there's transcendentals, 4/4, and everybody knows they're difficult, of course. But it's mainly, I'm meaning the grand etudes, Paganini. There's 2 versions, and the first version, 1838 I think it is, with some of the tempos Liszt gave for them, if they're correct. I don't even know if he could play them at that. Maybe he could, who knows. If you put the tempos that, he probably could, but Jesus. The 4th one in particular, there's 2 versions of the 4th one in the first version, if you get what I mean. The first version, 1838. The 4th one, there's 2 versions, and the second version of that, at the tempo, it seems almost unplayable. At that tempo, that's extreme difficulties. That's probably number 2 on the list of all difficult ones. Maybe number 3. It's extreme difficulties. And there's other of the first, the other etudes of the first version. The stretches are 12, so I think there's even 13s in there in the left hand. And some of them are even marked, you don't spread them. If you can't do stretches of 12s, waste of time, try the second version, or try Sermsey etudes or something, because that's extreme difficulties anyways. There are ones. Also, there's Liszt Mazeppa as well, with the crossing over of hands quite quick, and the chords, to get them chords at the end of the bar before you cross over to the next bar, to get them right at a decent tempo, to get them fast enough, I would say the extreme difficulties also as well. What else is there? Rachmaninoff, he's another one. He's the one, his etudes, tableau, his Red Riding Hood, stuff like that. Extreme difficulties at the speed you have to play them, and the chords for jumping about, I find that difficult. And his Piano Sonata number 2, especially the finale, it's almost relentless in technique, in at a tempo again of decent speed, very difficult, especially towards the end. And everybody knows his third piano concerto, first movement especially, I would say. It's with the cadenza, especially the harder cadenza of the two, the one before he revised it, I think. Everybody knows about that. Well, more a lot of people, that's also difficult. Also, it's Chopin, one of his slow etudes, Opus 10 number 3. To get the balance between each three parts, there's like the lower octave in the left hand, then the middle part, and then the melody. To get them correct, how you're supposed to staccato in certain parts and flowing in others and singing melody, and then the awkward time and sort of in the very left hand part, bottom part. A lot more difficult than you would think. It's beautiful and famous etude, and people take it for granted. They play it, and everybody, lots of people can play it. It's only slow, how can it be difficult? But if you try and play it properly, how it's written, scored, again, not too slow, especially if you don't play it too slow, it's not easy. And the parts towards the end with all the weird sixths in both hands, with all the accidentals all over the place, sharps and flats and not in the key, and not easy. Maybe slow, yes, but it is an etude and it is not easy. So yeah, what else? Mozart, say his sonata, famous sonata, everybody knows the first movement. Difficult, not so much the technique, just to get the sound right and the you know, the simplicity almost of it, but it's not simple almost as well. You find out a lot of Mozart stuff, again, not so easy. Now for the hardest part, ones, I would say the ends of some of Chopin's ballads and scherzos, they must be some of the hardest. And certain movements of his three sonatas are difficult. They have to be the top 5 or 6 of all hard pieces. And his sets of etudes, Opus 10 and 25, which I've mentioned, especially if you played them live as sets, played them Opus 10 and 25 together live, for extreme difficulties. Also put Rachmaninoff Concerto number 3 in there, especially the first movement. Sonata number 2. Then from numbers 4 or 5, 3 or 4, I would put more modern composers, Alcan and their etudes, and not as good in the quality of Chopin or say Bach or whatever, or Beethoven, but exceptional. Difficult, some of them, the timings in them and the way they're scored out and the tempos. So them as well. Say number 3, I would put Gavoski versions of the Chopin etudes. Some of them are just berserk. If you play them at a decent tempo, if you play them smooth and try and get all the balance correct, that can be extreme difficulties. Try and get the beautiful inner melodies out as well of some of them. Say the very first one, based on Opus 10 number 1, obviously, the very first one, if you try and get them little melody, if you listen, the little inner melodies, try and get them out to bring out quite beautiful, with the octaves as well, with the arpeggios in both hands as well. Not easy. And there's others harder than that, no doubt. I haven't really tried many of them, but they look hard, they sound hard, and people say they are, and I would say they are one of the hardest. Also, I would say, you might be a bit surprised, it's not in the top 6 list maybe, but Bach's Prelude number 1 in C. Technically, again, how can you pick that? That's the easiest ever, beginners, and in a way it is, yes, but it is, but there's that many different ways to play it, the things you can learn from it. After I've been trying to play it for many years now, you know, it took me many years to play it. It's one of the first things I've tried to master, even though it's very easy. It's similar rhythms and stuff. Well, it is really similar, or same all the way through, different chords obviously, but to try and play it correctly at a decent tempo, to try and play it smoothly, try and play it right, because of the easiness rhythms of it, I find it difficult. And it's not so much difficult and it's certainly not technically as such. It's just all the things you can learn from it. So easy, just the same rhythm almost all the way through, and with the things you can learn and achieve from that, just by many years, even 20 years, 30 years later, you come back to it and you think, hey, if I play this like this, so it's a very good, like a lot of his preludes are back, it's a very good prelude I recommend to anybody, and not just to learn it and say I can play that, keep going back to it maybe even. Because of that, I would also put that on the list. Very surprising, some people might think, but I would. Same with the first book, Prelude and Fugue number 4 in C sharp minor. To get that prelude to sound correct and balanced, it is not easy, and the fugue again, to get it to sound correct and overall sound world again, it not easy. Back even put it's for the beginner and for the more advanced player as well, the first book. So it's surprising it might seem. A lot of them are not as easy as you might think, and there's a lot to learn from them. So I would put them on the list as well. So anyways, back to the most difficult. That's 3. Number 2, I would obviously probably put the first version, Liszt Etude, Grand Paganini Etude, 1838 version. Number 4, second version. Them arpeggios at a speed tempo that Liszt put. Is it unplayable? I don't know. Could Liszt play it? Probably, maybe, but I certainly can't. I've never seen anybody who can play it. I've seen one video on all the YouTube, somebody playing it, and they don't play it anywhere near fast enough to Liszt tempo. Still good, and well done for them to playing it. It's still good. There's one video and it's not really fast enough. So, and I've seen some amateurs play it as well, videos. I think I've seen one of them amateur play it. Again, good, but nowhere near fast enough for Liszt tempo. I can't play it anywhere near. I don't think I'd ever be able to. Is it unplayable? But anyways, I would put that at number 2 probably. And finally, the hardest, say Beethoven's late sonatas. There's obviously the Opus 53 and Opus 57 sonatas there, especially the finales. Say 53 with the more beautiful slow type, 57 the more dark and eviler type. Especially the 57 finale, they are not easy, especially if you follow the repeats as well in the middle. 57, and very difficult. But the late sonatas, intellectually as well, especially the last move, especially the last sonata 111. Not technically as well, obviously it's one of the hardest piano pieces ever. But I mean, especially for Opus 111, intellectually, emotionally, to get that right, extreme. Very, very difficult. But the hardest of all, and I pick as number 1 on my list, is Beethoven's Hammerklavier Sonata 106, the first movement. The fugue is a beast. Played the right, followed Beethoven's tempos with Schoenze backed up, and also people do doubt Schoenze's tempos. I would say they're about right. Certainly, I wouldn't argue with them. I don't know any better than them. And Chopin copied Schoenze's tempos for Bach's preludes and fugues, for one of his pupils apparently, and I'm certainly not arguing with Chopin neither when it comes to piano playing. So I would go with them, and it's the best information knowledge I've got, so I can't really argue too much. He knows more than me. He was like pupil of Beethoven, and you know he taught Liszt and whoever, and Chopin followed his studies on Bach and tempos, so I'm not arguing with Chopin particularly. So yeah, I would go with that. So yeah, if you follow the Beethoven's tempos for that sonata, which is the only sonata he wrote tempos for, strangely enough. I wish he wrote them for some more. But then he quoted, what's all this about tempos? People should know how to play my sonatas. You're either good and can play them or you're not. And if you're not, my tempos would be of no use to you anyways. Beethoven apparently put that. So, probably on that thought is why he didn't put tempos for most of them. But he had to really for 106, because nobody would have ever guessed or tried to play any of them tempos if he didn't. So I understand that sort of, even though that philosophy, I understand that. So yeah, these tempos, the fugue, yeah, the last movement of Beast, the slow movement of the intellect and the emotion in it, and different sections, parts, very difficult. Again, the interlude before the fugue, to get that right, for the fugue to fit in right with it, very difficult. The length of the piece, 50 minutes or so, 30 minutes, 35 minutes, whatever it is, very difficult. Even the scherzo, to get it to fit in after the slow, fast first movement and the slow movement, not easy. The overall balance and sound world, of course, obviously, like I said, not easy. But the first movement, there's something about that movement, the tempo he put, which I think is correct, half note 138, quarter note 276 it'll be. You can't never get it exact, and you're not supposed to repeat, but the tempo is correct, and that is the hardest thing I have ever tried to play. I don't even think if it's possible as such, but it's like not. You can't play it. If you could play it, you wouldn't be able to hear it, I don't think. No, you can't get it exact. You're not supposed to exact. You've got to keep the drive going. Always aim for that half note 138, and then you'll feel it right, and then you might not be able to hear it. Seems strange, but that first movement of that hammer clavier is absolutely mental. It's the things you can learn from that if you can manage to understand it and play and agree with what I'm saying and all about it. As far as I know, from years now trying to play it and study the tempo and won't do this or that. It should last probably about 8 minutes 30 with repeats for the first movement, but you can't really time it because of the way that how the strangeness is it. Whether Beethoven knew this and meant it to be like that exactly, I don't know, but whether he did or not, he's come across, whether purposefully or not, something very great and special there, which there's a lot to learn from, not just musically, in life and wisdom. If you can get some sort of idea about that first, it's the most stupendous movement I have ever heard of in piano. It's almost impossible to play. It's at the speed you have to play it. You've got to keep that up for 8 minutes, and then all the rest of the sonata after that, it's absolutely unbelievable. It's the hardest thing I've ever heard of to play and the hardest thing I've ever tried. So that is number one. Closely followed, well, not that closely, but Liszt's 1838 version of Paganini Etude number 4, and then, you know, Chopin Etude maybe 25 number 6, or Rachmaninoff's third, or Gawowski versions, or Liszt paraphrases, stuff like that. They're in the top ones. So yeah, I just thought I'd say, I babbled a bit about that, sorry, but yeah, just thought I'd say about that. For some of what I find the most difficult piano pieces, and obviously, as I say, I haven't played them all, these pieces and more modern couples. Oh yeah, and there's Scriabin, no, is it a French composer who wrote that, Gaspard Delanoë, or whatever. That's apparently difficult, and that Islami is apparently difficult, and there's all other modern pieces as well, but I haven't really heard them or tried them. But they're some of the most difficult as well. So yeah, I just thought I'd say a little video about that. It's debatable, of course, and it depends what you find difficult. As I say, that one on there, if you can easily do like double trill thirds or whatever fast, then you won't find that so much difficult. Maybe find the arpeggio one if you can't do that, or vice versa. And you know, and people have their own opinion. It depends what people find difficult, of course. But that's what I find. What I've tried. Without doubt, hammer clavier first movement number 1, then Liszt Etude, then stuff like that. Okay, sorry about that babble there. That hammer clavier though, that is stupendous. Anyways, yeah, and that Liszt fourth etude tempo especially, mental. So yeah, maybe you'll agree with some of these, maybe you'll find some strange, or maybe not. You try some more, listen to all these pieces, different versions if you can, see what you think. But that's what I find. Okay, bye for now, have a good night and enjoy playing the piano and stuff. Have fun. Jamie, good night for now. from you.